everyone. Welcome to the Bronx Music Heritage Center. My name is Elena Martinez. I'm one of the artistic directors of the Bronx Music Heritage Center. And tonight is another segment of our online program, Percussion Discussion. And though we are all sheltering in place and we don't have any live programs at the Bronx Music Heritage Center, we will be bringing you weekly programs to highlight the great musicians from the Bronx and beyond. So tonight for our percussion discussion, we have with us two legendary Bronx drummers. One is our co-artistic director of the Bronx Music Heritage Center, band leader, percussionist, educator, Grammy-nominated musician Bobby Sanabria. And also with us, we are so happy to have with us one of our Bronx Music Heritage Center's Music Advisory Board members, also Grammy Award-winning recording rock star and jazz musician, Will Calhoun. So, but before we begin, I'm going to let Bobby just introduce and talk to you a little bit about tonight's program. Enjoy the show.
All right, Elena. Applause for Elena. Okay. Nice. I dig the hat. Anyway, tonight is our second percussion discussion, and we're so happy to have my friend, colleague, and fellow Bronx beat master, the one and only Will Calhoun, with us tonight. We're going to talk about drums with Will, about his fantastic, interesting, fascinating career, how he started, all that, and more. But first, let's look at a little bit of Will discussing some of his principles about how he constructs rhythms on the drum set.
Hello there. My name is Will Calhoun. It's a pleasure to be here. I am a drummer musician from the Bronx, New York, and I'm residing now in the Bronx, New York. So it's a pleasure to be back at home here in my studio. And you can check my information, Instagram or my bio to see what I've done. I'm born and raised here, went on to Berkeley College of Music to study recording and engineering. And I returned to New York, joined Living Color. And from Living Color, I went on to do some fantastic things while in the band. Still in the band, we're still together. Played with some great jazz musicians, great world music musicians, Harry Belafonte, Sadiq Keita, Umu Sangari, Jazz Cats, Wayne Shorter, Pharoah Sanders, Ron Carter, just to name a few. And a lot of hip hop cats, older ones for some of you guys, Public Enemy, Run DMC, Yasin Bey, also known as Mos Def, and a few others. But here I am, and I am a lover of rhythm, I am a lover of music, and I'm a lover of sound. I did spend a lot of time researching my instrument and the sound of the drums, mostly in West Africa, Mali, Senegal, Northern Africa and Morocco, and a little bit in South Africa. But just to get a little history of my instrument, what it means, the vibrations it gives off, how it heals, how it creates other reactions in the music for spiritual reasons sometimes just to party and have fun. Other times it's celebratory, something that you do at weddings or birthdays, those kind of things. So this instrument carries a lot of weight and a lot of responsibilities. We're going to begin today with a really basic one, and that's the main role of the drum set, and that is to keep the time, to keep things solid, keep things moving, get a great vibration, get people to feel great, have people dance, smile, whatever positive means you can get out of playing this instrument. We're going to discuss that today. So we're going to begin with how the drum set is structured. And it's structured like a pyramid. If you think about a pyramid, the bottom of the pyramid is the kick drum. The middle of the pyramid is the snare drum. The top of the pyramid gets into the cymbals, the hi-hat, the seasonings, toms, the little fills you do to help season. We're going to play that pattern the last time on the drum kit, so you can relax and make it happen. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Try that, try with the metronome, try it, different tempos. slow, very fast. Record yourself. Make sure things are even. You can hear everything the way you want to hear it. And if you want to get a bit more experimental, you can try to raise the volume on each set part of the drum set. You can keep the beat the same and make the hi-hat get louder and softer. You can play that pattern and have the snare get louder and softer while playing the pattern. You can do it with the kick drum and have the kick drum get louder and softer, where everything else remains the same. That's the beginning of independence in your limbs, making the drum set sound louder and softer at your will with your own ideas. That's further on down the line, but for those of you who have maybe a bit more experience, try that, and that could be something to make this little small exercise more interesting for you.
Were experiencing the same thing I was experiencing. We couldn't really hear anything. So let's go old school with Will on this. Will, talk a little bit about what you talked about. Talk a little bit about what you talked about on the kit and demonstrate what you were just demonstrating, because we couldn't.
Sure, man. Sure. I was talking about a little bit the structure of the drums, Bobby, and how the kit. I think about the kit when I'm playing more popular music, more rock and roll, more funk, in the shape of a pyramid. And that the kick drum takes up the most real estate as a concept. As the pyramid peaks and gets higher, the snare, drum, maybe some other kind of things you have on the side of your kit, timbales or octobans, and those things are in the middle. And then the cymbals are the top part of the pyramid. And the beat structure and the sonic definition you give the drum set is built on that, where the bass drum carries a little bit more real estate, the snare drum a little bit less, and the hi-hat and cymbals a little bit less. So you have this nice shape of sound and how you approach it. Of course, depending on the style and your technique, you can vary. Certainly you can make the middle part louder or the top part louder, but just for basics, Bobby, I go with that concept so people can hear and feel the volume of things. So they're not playing the hi-hat and the snare and the kick drum all at the same volume. Then you have no definition. So the beat that I was playing, or similar one, you want to just think about something really simple. Playing a groove along that line. Maybe if that's too soft, let me know about it. I can get some sticks if you can't hear the little small pieces in there. But you want to have the kick drum to be as solid as possible in the bottom. That's taking up most of the volume, most of the space. You want this to come in the middle. This gets to the smaller part, little seasonings. Let me get a louder brush so you can hear it a little bit better. That's the basic idea I was expressing, where you have the bottom to be heavy, the top. Then you can hear the drum set in a relationship sense and not just an onslaught of sound.
Now, would you use that? Do you use that principle all the time in any style of music? Obviously, every style of music has its own vocabulary and syntax and everything. But do you always use that concept when you approach any other style of music, other than
most of it? I do. It's a great question, Bobby. Most of the time, I do. I mean, if I'm playing heavy volume with guitars and basses, yes, because I need that bass drum to drive the music. And I need that rhythm of the bass drum to lock in the bass and the guitar and the keyboards. So the pulse is there. I don't want my snare so much to be the pulse or the hi-hat to be the pulse unless I'm playing either with guys I'm familiar with playing with, or if I'm playing straight ahead, the bass drum takes on a different kind of a well, playing straight ahead. But as I said, in more popular music, more hip hop, more rock, that's how that's designed. You're playing jazz, you got to think a little bit more top down. You got to have almost like an inverted pyramid, where the ride is keeping the pulse, and the guys in the band need to hear that. One of the things I said in the video piece, although we couldn't hear all the volume on it, is one of the things to practice. I mentioned to my students also is to take that any pattern, a jazz pattern, salsa pattern, a rock pattern, and raise the volume in each limb. Keep the same pattern, right? If you're playing the hi-hat, make that go louder and soft while keeping the snare and kick where you have it. Do the same thing with the snare drum. Do the same thing with the bass drum. Whether you're doing it with a clave, whether you're doing it with a triplet on the hi-hat, whether you're playing a ride cymbal pattern, try to get each individual limb to be able to go up and down in volume. This will help you to build a vocabulary on dynamics and how to approach it. But that, to begin with, Bobby, yes, I normally start that way just to get my sound locked in and for other musicians to be able to hear where I'm coming from. Then I can make all the adjustments from that point on.
I just want to remind everybody that after we finish the interview portion with Will, you can ask questions. In fact, you could ask questions now if you want in the chat discussion part. So anybody that wants to ask a question of Will, just feel free right now and start asking. So you were talking about that inverted pyramid where in pop music, rock, hip hop, funk, it's more bass drum heavy, and that's the bottom of the pyramid. In jazz, straight ahead music, the pyramid is inverted. Now it's more cymbal heavy. Could you give us an example of that? So
sure, absolutely, absolutely.
Most of the young drummers today don't have that much experience playing jazz.
When you want to have your time leaves from here, and the pulse leaves from here to here. I'll try to stick. This now becomes the life of the party, and it's more the live or fuller sound. And then the snare and the bass drum become a little bit more accent oriented, and your hi-hat becomes, this becomes the biggest part of the pyramid inverted, hat becomes the middle part, kick and snare now become a bit lighter parts. So you want to have it first, the time established. Hear that? 1, 2.
It's hard to hear with the stick. Maybe if you try to brush.
Once you have that going, that's kind of the loudest part of that scenario, or the most clear, the most articulate. And your kick and your snare becomes more of accents you put in, pushing the band, setting up cues, and that kind of thing. So you're kind of using it more in this way. That kind of vibe.
Could you try it again one more time? Use the brush this time, because for some reason when you're going to the ride cymbal with the stick, it's not coming out. So this way our listeners and viewers.
How's that?
Not try the other brush you were using. Maybe it'll work better.
These?
Yeah.
Okay. They're soft here, but okay. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. That's kind of the idea. You want to have the top guided, because you got a walking bass. That's a louder sound. It's a thicker sound. You want the cymbal to marry with the bass, acoustic bass, to lock in there. And then everything on the bottom and on the kit now becomes more accent pieces.
We got some questions, but first I wanted to go over a little bit about your career. You were born and raised in the Bronx. What inspired you just to first learn how to play? We've talked about this before. There were certain people you grew up with in the neighborhood. But who was the first drummer that you saw that blew your mind and said, "Oh, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to pursue. I'd like to do this as a profession." Who would you say?
It's my older brother, Bobby. It's my older brother.
No kidding. Mm-hmm.
So it was in the house, and my older brother was a prodigy. He played very well at a very young age. I was intimidated by it, of course. We're about 6, almost 7 years apart. But yeah, he had the drum set in the house, and my parents didn't want him to play, so my neighbor bought him a drum kit. The next door neighbor bought him a drum set, believe it or not, for Christmas, and he brought it over to the house. And my brother took lessons where you also went to Palumbo Music in the Bronx, with Mr. Palumbo's music store. And then we had the neighborhood, Steve Jordan around the corner, Ray Chu around the corner, Pumpkin, you know, a few blocks away. We had all of this great music, and you know, a lot of Puerto Ricans and Dominicans and Haitians in our community as well. So not only did we have young musicians playing, but we were the kind of kids that went to other people's homes. We went to our friend's house to hang out. And most of my friends had very cool dads and moms, and the dads would always pull our coat to music and say, "Oh, you hip to this, you hip to this, you hip to that." So the first experience was seeing my brother, and then it was just being in my neighborhood and having very cool neighbors that played music, and they had, you know.
What's your brother's name?
Charles Calhoun. It's Charles.
Is he playing professionally now? Is it that
he played up until about 19, Bobby, and then stopped 19, 20, and he kind of just didn't have the same interest in it, which is why I waited late. I waited till 16 to start, because I was just kind of really intimidated to come and jump on a kid afterwards. But I did. By the time I was about 15, 16, I decided to take it seriously.
And you mentioned a person named Pumpkin, who was I think
yes,
his name was Eric Bedwin, I think.
Yeah, Errol Bedwin. Yeah,
Errol Bedwin. He's like legendary in the Bronx, amongst Bronxites who are in the know into drums. Tell us a little bit about him, his background, and why they call him Pumpkin, and why he was so incredible.
Thank you, man, for bringing that up. Pumpkin was, I guess, because he wasn't like a kind of a fat dude. He was just kind of round, first of all. So that's the nickname that he came from. Pumpkin, the Bedwoods are from Costa Rica. So it was interesting to go to their house too, because they spoke fluent Spanish, and they had this culture of Spanish music, and then they were born in the Bronx, but their parents had a lot of music from the Caribbean, Latin music. But Pumpkin was a prodigy also, in my opinion. Incredible drummer, played incredible classical piano by memory, Rachmaninoff, Beethoven, whatever you could just call the tune, he would play it. And he was an amazing bass player. But he was instrumental in our community in the Bronx, because at the time, hip hop wasn't a style of music that was for the record companies. It wasn't a label thing. It was in our community. And before DJs came on board, the baddest musicians would play in Hayfield Park or whatever park in the Bronx, and rappers would rap to live bands. That's what I saw growing up when I was 12, 13 years old. So the same guy that can play Tito Puente's music, or John Coltrane's music, or James Brown's music, or Mahavishnu's music also played in these bands where rappers would rap to. So Pumpkin at first was part of this entourage of great musicians that had the history down. They knew jazz, they knew Latin music, they knew classical music. So they weren't just guys going up there and winging it. And that was the beginning of that concept. What Pumpkin did that was revolutionary was he realized the industry was changing before it changed, and he started to sell beats. He would make a beat, and he would have any rapper come over to his house and rap and then build these things. And it was a thing that was beginning. And I was in his basement. His younger brother and I are still best friends to this day. I would go to the house, and we saw Pumpkin play things, and they would go in the studio and record them. And we heard these beats on people's records. So he was selling them to record labels in 1972, which is revolutionary. So, you know, he would drive we were younger, so he would pick us up in a car, drive about 8 miles per hour, and he would play his track that he sold to whoever, and whoever was going to rap on it or sing on it, and let us listen to the track. So he was way ahead of his time. And Bobby, that seeing Steve Jordan and seeing Pumpkin and seeing guys in the neighborhood get on the radio and get on TV and have hit records, it inspired me to also realize that it was possible to be a successful musician.
Fantastic. Tell us what happened to him. In terms of,
Well, Pumpkin, unfortunately, man, he died very young, 38 years old, I believe. He died really, really young, and he was, the thing about Pumpkin, I never saw him angry with anybody. I never saw him angry, period. He always was funny. He always was joking. He would snap on cats. He would write, his brain was just quick. He could make a joke or make a rhyme, say something really quickly. He was immediate, huge smile all the time, very positive. One of the guys in the neighborhood who told me to go to Berkeley. All of my other friends told me not to go. As you know, the great Ralph McDonald lived in Mount Vernon, and I was really young at the time. I went to Ralph and I said, Ralph, you know, I want to go to Berkeley. He said, what the hell are you going to do that for, man? You know, you stay down, you know, Lou Donaldson went to the church my mother goes to. So my mother called me one day and said, Lou Donaldson is here at church. You know, maybe you could talk to Lou. I went to meet Lou, the church, and Lou said the same thing. What the hell are you going to go to Berkeley for? They're going to ruin you up there. And Pumpkin came to me and said, no, man, go, man. We need all kinds of soldiers. You know, go up there and bring something back to us. We're here. We're cool. We're doing our thing. You go do your thing. I'll never will forget that. But yeah, he unfortunately, man, really young, wasn't able, in my opinion, to get the credit. You could find a few things on this label called NROB, ENROB Records, but he's responsible for, I think, the industry becoming what is known today as the hip hop industry. One of the key people, one of the major players.
For the young people that are out there watching and listening, Lou Donaldson, this famous tenor saxophonist who's part of the history of jazz, and he's still alive, and he's still doing it. And one of the funniest cats on planet Earth. He'll give you the reality check.
Yeah, in 0.1 second.
Right away, yeah. But he's part of the history of jazz, and you know, I would say at this point, hundreds of recordings of him appearing on people's recordings and as a leader.
Absolutely.
Now, when you went to the Berklee College of Music, I remember when I went, I was a freshman in 1975. Boston was a different place back then, and I'm sure it was kind of weird, me coming from New York City, from the Bronx, from the South Bronx, and going to a place that unfortunately was racially polarized at the time. Was it the same for you when you went there? Did you feel that vibe, or were you insulated in the school to a certain extent from all of that?
Well, no. I mean, Boston is let's just keeping it real. It's a racially polarized city now, one of the most racially polarized cities. So yeah, I was told don't go to South Boston. I was told to watch out for this and watch out for that, and I did stay around the school area. As you know, for young folks out there, I wanted to study with the great Alan Dawson, who I think is one of the greatest drum set teachers of all time, super genius. Taught Tony Williams when Tony was 9 years old, and so many other great drummers. But I was afraid to go to Alan's house. Number one, he had a waiting list almost a year or two long sometimes. And when you're in school and you're broke, sometimes those aren't priorities. But I did want to go. But yeah, I was intimidated to get on the train or drive out there. And then I didn't want to go to Boston to have something like that happen to me. To be honest, I'm from New York, as you know, I'm a Bronx guy. If I'm gonna deal with any kind of vibe along that way, I'll let it happen to me in my own town, not up there. So I stuck around the Mass Ave area. I had a lot of great musicians and students that looked after me when I arrived. You know, Branford Marsalis was a guy who graduated, the late, great Victor Bailey. There were a lot of great musicians, man, who, when the minute I walked in that door, you know, pulled my coattail and helped me out and told me who to study with, what's the best harmony teacher. So I had a fantastic experience being at the school, challenging one too. Everything up there wasn't great, but it worked out great for me. And definitely, Bobby, I stayed by the school and around the school. I played a couple of gigs, not too far, but I was warned and I believed it. And I had a couple of friends of mine, unfortunately, that were attacked and they had horrible things happen to them by going out outside the town. So I stayed close to the school and did my schoolwork and was dying to get back to the Bronx as soon as I graduated.
I remember I was in my freshman year, I used to drive back every weekend with my then roommate, David Carmona. We were in high school band together, great trumpet player. And
Wow.
we would discuss all the craziness up there. But this interview is about you, not about me. But we could talk about that some other time later, you know, because we have similar experiences. We got some great questions from people that are logged on. This is a question from Tim Rowan. He wants to know, what is your practice session look like? How long do you practice? What do you work on? This sounds like one of the reporters at the White House press conferences. Yeah, I have 3 questions. And he also wants to know, can you discuss a little bit about exercises for double pedals, for double bass?
Absolutely. Okay, I'll try to handle all of that. Practice area or routine, you're kind of looking at it. My practice varies from kit to pad, and as a drummer, it's also important for me to practice on other instruments, acoustic guitar and piano. A, to play songs, B, for dexterity, and C, for learning composition. Because I don't want to just drum on a drum kit and be a caveman and just beat the drums. I want to know what a bridge is, how to set it up, chorus, verse, dynamics, and knowing songs and physically playing songs helps you to become a better drummer. Because when you play whatever song you're playing, let's just take a standard, you want to do Autumn Leaves, you know what the bridge is, you know you're 4 bars away, you know you're 8 bars away, you know, and then when you know that on the piano, on the guitar, you'll really be more, I think, sensitive to what's happening in the music with all the other guys on stage. Routine-wise, and what do? There's a lot of great books out there. My favorite is a very common one, which is Ted Reed Syncopation. And I like that book for a lot of reasons. There's the obvious things you can read in the book and you can play it down as it is, but you can take that language and break it up into different things. I can't get too deep into it now, but if this gentleman wants to contact me later, I take the accents that are written down and break them up into paradiddles or triplets or single strokes. Each quarter note you can make a different pattern. Then the patterns become more challenging, your sticking becomes more solid, and around a kit, the volume becomes your volume becomes more in control. So that's one of my favorite books. Another one is which I may have over there. It's Rhythmic Training by Robert Starrer. And Rhythmic Training is a great book to get because it helps you how to read in both clefs, and it gets into groups of 3s and 5s and 7s and different things you can do. It's almost a bit like a classical book, but it's a good book to look at. So when you see something, you recognize it. Like in drum language, when we see a flam, we know what it sounds like, right? You look at a flam on a paper, the little 8th note, and you see the little tie. Well, with this book, it helps you to see phrases. So does Ted Reed Syncopation. So you can look at a phrase. When you read a book, you can read a book 1 word at a time, or you can look at the whole sentence. Speed readers look at the whole sentence and read down the page. The average reader just reads each word individually. Robert Starrer's book helps you to see the music, especially sheet music, in a form where you can recognize and identify what things are. So playing it becomes easier. I think when it comes to double bass things, my only advice to any double bass players, treat your feet like your hands. You know, learn a paradiddle, learn triplets, learn how to play soft to loud. Try to, if you're playing sambas and things, maybe you can do a samba or a Mozambique feel with the right foot playing the pattern, then try it with the left foot. The idea on the drum set is to have full independence and have full balance on things. So one foot doesn't sound louder than the other, and one hand doesn't sound louder than the other. So don't separate your sticking exercises from your double bass exercises. If you can get both of those things married together, your playing will be tremendous.
I have a quick question. This was something when I studied with Keith Copeland when I was at Berkeley. We were talking about playing what we would call flat-footed and playing with your toes. And do you prefer one over the other? I mean, I play both because Keith taught me that way. Do you just prefer both? Or it depends on the situation, et cetera, et cetera?
That's a great question. Being a Tony Williams fan and having the luxury of being able to do a clinic tour with him, And I watched sat behind his kit all day. I was shocked Tony plays flat-footed the whole time. It's incredible. He has that kind of technique and on a 24-inch bass drum in that volume. I am in between flat-footed, I'm a little above flat-footed and heel. So I like to use the ball of the foot, and I'm kind of in the middle. I raise it up according to the volume. With Living Color, it's probably going to go up fairly high, and I keep the ball of my feet flat on the pedals. The ankles go up a little bit higher, and when I'm pushing down into the pedal, I have more volume control, and it's easier to play. More medium music, honestly, I keep kind of like a level angle. I very rarely, honestly, play flat-footed at all unless I'm playing very, very soft.
Yeah, I guess I would say maybe flat-footed is not the right term because I don't think really anybody plays completely flat-footed. You have to have some degree of flexibility with the ball of your foot.
Yes.
So great answer. Thank you so much. Now we have a question from Brad Ellsworth. Can you show us some fundamental rhythm studies with the foundational things that you learned from West African drumming, which have had an influence on your drum set playing? Because I know you've been to Africa several times, etc.
Yes.
And could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, man. Sure. I mean, one of the things. This one's a little bit tricky, but it'll be a good example. And this is kind of an Angolan rhythm. And it's called maracatu. It's mostly, it made its way to the northern part of Brazil and kind of got stuck there. It's played on a multiple percussion ensemble, which you got go-go bells and those kind of things. The other thing I'll just say briefly, and I'll show you what I'm going to play, is I also like to take the patterns and mix them, because some of the African traditional drumming are built for 2 or 3 different drums. And I like to take a pattern sometimes and play that pattern on the bell, and then play the other parts on the kit. And I don't hope it doesn't get too loud, but for example, there's a pattern that just the bell pattern, it's in 3 technically. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But also, if you're thinking 4, it's almost like a shuffle. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So with that pattern, I just put a samba bass drum in the bottom. That's 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Will Calhoun, you play at that speed. It's a bright pattern. And it's a combination a little bit of the samba in the bottom and the Ghanaian pattern that this cat showed me, the bell pattern. So when I play that on the bottom, is that clear enough? Can you hear the parts clearly there?
We can't hear the right hand on the cymbal. That's the only problem. Maybe if you.
How is this?
What happens is we can hear it and then it drops out.
Okay, so how about if I do it on what about on here? No?
That works.
Okay, so let's do it here. So we got the samba in the bottom. That's a 4. We got the 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1. I put those 2 together, and then I put the hand drum piece, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Same big feel. that's the idea of crossing it. The maracatu piece is a little bit more involved, but that's one of my favorite ones. The maracatu is a little bit. It's going to be hard to hear it because it involves a lot of snare drum parts, but it's the same concept. Try to see if you can hear this. I don't know if you can. Try with the snare. Can you hear this? That too?
It comes out muddy. It comes out muddy.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll stick with the first one, and that works best with the volume. But basically, you want to take.
That was fantastic. That was fantastic.
Yeah, you want to take a 4 and a 3 because if you do that, if you play samba, you can still play the samba on top, depending on who's soloing or whatever. Mix it up between the 3, 4, 3, 4. You can go back and forth on that. That's the idea.
That'd be killing too, like orchestrating it, your right hand on bells, on different cowbells and things like that.
Yeah, there's some over here.
Which I'm sure you've done already, you know. So that's fantastic. You know what that means? That means that you got to write a book, start writing a book.
Yes, you're right. Yes.
Okay, we have another question. Here's
Yes.
From a fellow drummer who's also a Bronxite, Greg Burrows. How do you approach? He's a great drummer, got a great group. He's got a new recording coming out as well.
Nice.
How do you approach developing a drum solo?
Wow, that's a great question.
I guess in this context, you would mean just like a solo all by yourself, you know, just solo drums.
Well, how would I approach it is to be honest, man, is to just almost in a sense not think about it in a way. It would be the same as I know who you are, Bobby. We're friends. We meet somewhere and whatever, man. We go have some food or something. I'm not gonna know. We don't pick a topic, man. We just start talking, you know. And you could be like, "Yo, Will, the Mets, man. Yo, the Knicks suck. Or I got to get a new manager." You know, yo, man, did you see? You know, it could be. Did you see the new movie of the block? I look at the solo in that way of I have these things around me, and then what kind of conversation do I want to have? And once I begin doing something, I'll embellish it. I'll embellish that conversation. So the idea is just to be, you know what your chops are, you know what you could do, and then sometimes it's just a matter of feeling around the kit and getting some sound ideas. That's the conversation. Then when I want to expand my conversation, maybe I'll go to some cymbals. And don't think square. Don't think always downbeats with. It's your solo, it's your vibe, it's your dynamic range, it's your ideas. But I begin with letting go and just stepping into the conversation by hitting something and then going from there. This has another kind of a sound. This might get me to think differently about something. That gives you another vibe. The bells give you a vibe, may change a vibe. You know, so I would say for me, I go into it completely open-minded and see where it takes me. Yes, with Living Color, I know that's more of a rock audience, but trust me, within that rock audience, I am totally not afraid to play something from Cuba or from Mozambique or from Haiti. I think it's also important that they get a taste of that in the rock show. So I like to mix it up and make the connection. It's the rhythm, the sound, and putting things together in one solo.
Great, fantastic. Just to review, you talked a little bit about the Syncopation book, which anybody who's studied drums knows that book. Syncopation is like a Bible for all of us.
Yes.
But, and you talked about Alan Dawson, all the different ways that Alan developed to teach coordinated independence with that book. And the other book that you mentioned, I just so anybody wants to write it down right now, the other book that you mentioned
is Rhythmic Training.
Rhythmic Training, great.
And the author, I believe, is Robert Starrer. Starer. Yeah, Starrer. Robert Starrer. It's called Rhythmic Training. It's a great book. It's a really small book, but it's great.
Oh, here's a question for me. Steve Ortega remembers. Oh no, wait. I think this is a question for you. No. Steve Ortega remembers that you signed a dollar bill for him in front of Manny's. Okay. Why did you change from the Pearl Drum Company? And talk about your drum sound
on the Vivid album.
On the Vivid album. Just quick.
Okay.
So you signed a dollar bill for him. Why did you change from Pearl drums? I can tell you why I changed, but that's enough. And talk about your drum sound on the Vivid LP.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much for that. Wow, that was a while ago, signing that dollar in front of Manny's. I wish we still had 48th Street. Endorsements are relationships between the artist and the artist's career and the company. And like any job in any relationship, it has to work. And when it doesn't work, you shouldn't stay in it. And without getting too heavy-handed, the relationship between Pearl and I did not work. It did not work in the very beginning. And we didn't see eye to eye. I was touring a lot. It sort of got me off the ground. Thanks to the great Omar Hakim, he introduced me to Pearl. And that was my kind of introduction into the company. But the company was not, my relationship with Living Color and winning Grammys and opening for the Rolling Stones, I certainly was not getting the proper respect from a company at the height Living Color was at that time. I was almost getting no respect, to be honest. So at that point, I think as an artist, for any drummer listening out there, any artist, you have to respect yourself first in this industry, whether you're singing or you're dancing or whatever you got to do. And if you have standards, you have to stick to those standards, because as you become more successful or make more money or go further downfield in this business, people are going to try to reduce and lower your standards and lower your expectations on things by hyping up other things that may have no interest or serve you no good down the line. So I felt like at that time I was young, but I was in a hot band and the band was happening, and I felt like I should be with a company that's going to respect me as Will Calhoun and respect Living Color and respect 2 Grammys and respect opening for the Rolling Stones. Who wouldn't? They didn't. So I had to put that down, and I didn't want an endorsement really after that. It left a little bit of a bitter taste in my mouth, but I wound up going to Sonar, and they were fantastic, and I was with them for like 20 years to that time. The sound on Vivid is very interesting. You would ask me that. That's my very first drum kit that I bought when I was 16 years old, pumping gas. I saved the money by pumping gas at a mobile station on Gun Hill and Boston Road. And I was so excited about that drum set that when I told my mother I wanted to play, my brother being a prodigy and stopping, my family wasn't interested in investing in another drummer in the family. So I decided to not ask them. And I broke up with my girlfriend at the time in high school. I quit all my sports teams and I worked. Christmas, New Year's, time and a half, and I saved the money and I bought my first Tama. That's a Tama Superstar drum set with an Imperial Star bass drum. I still have it. It's still immaculate to this day. That was my drum sound I used in high school. I used it in Berklee College of Music. I used it on my first 2 tours at Harry Belafonte. And fortunately enough, I recorded Vivid with that drum set. So the drum sound there was a combination of working with a great drum set, that Tama kit. 2 was Ed Stasium, an amazing producer who was able to get an incredible drum sound for me on that record. And 3, at Berklee, I was a recording and engineering major, and I was experimenting with drum sounds. And I was doing things like putting a PA system in the drum room and running my kick drum through the PA system, and then having the kick drum blast out of the PA system and back towards the drum set. And I would get this kind of huge Godzilla kind of sound. So I was already pissing off my teachers at school by doing all of these weird things, putting plant pots in front of the tweeter and doing different things to try to shape my sound, because I was learning about machines, but I also wanted to academically learn about how sounds are shaped. And Berkeley gave me that opportunity to do that. So by the time I arrived in the recording studio with Living Color, Ed Stasem is a brilliant man. I have to give him the credit. But I already had some ideas in my head about shaping my sound, and Vivid was a great opportunity to take all of my youthful experience and be with the world-class producer engineer and put it together to get those drum sounds for that record.
Fantastic. We want to remind everybody, you can still ask Will any questions that you want. Just go to the chat section, put down the questions, and I'll pass them on to Will. Talking about your experience being a recording, an engineering major and producing major at Berkeley, how things have changed, the landscape has changed over the last 20, 30 years for all musicians, but particularly drummers. How important is it to know technology today as not only a drummer, but any kind of musician? We're utilizing technology so we can communicate now simply because of the situation that we're in. But in the recording studios, in terms of modern recording, especially for pop-oriented music, rock-oriented music, how important is it? Because obviously in the world of jazz, you come in with your sound, your cymbals, etc. There's not too much. Nobody on a jazz record is going, hey, let's experiment putting a PA inside the drum booth and having your bass drum sound coming back at you. We'll re-record that and this, that, and the other. How important is it in terms of in today's business for a young drummer to know technology?
I think if you don't have it, you're going to be out. Unfortunately, I just think that's the new language. There are bright sides to it to me, and there are dark sides. I think I try to teach my students to also learn how to tune a drum, how to use brushes, how to hear pitches, how to hear tones in the drums, and both sides. I love machines. I've always loved programming. I was teased for it for many years growing up because I did love listening to Max and Elvin and Blakey and studying those guys. But I Pumpkin was around the corner. So here's a guy who can play incredible drums, but he had the machines when nobody had them. That's the first Lynn drum that I saw. And I saw him successfully having a career with it and also being creative. Pumpkin's program beats were brilliant then, and they are now. So Pumpkin also inspired me to realize, don't be afraid of the machine. Learn it, get inside of it, understand how it works, use it to the best of your ability. If I turn my camera around, you're going to see a lot of electronics behind this phone of me. One of the machines over there is from the 50s, a drum machine. So I believe in having both aspects. But to answer your question directly, you have to have it. You have to know how to do the machines and work them now. The music, today's music, you have to just know how to program and use Pro Tools or Logic or GarageBand or whatever. It is today's language. I would like for younger people to also go in both directions and learn how to play guitar or play chords and play piano and understand what it means to tune a guitar. I think it's only going to make them better artists overall. More successful, I can't touch that, but more informed, yes, absolutely. And that's my my advice to young folks that do. But Bobby, you and I, we're older now. I'm rebuilding my place now, and I have a digital board, something I fought against for years. I had an analog board in my studio for years, but now I got the manuals out and the tutorials, and I'm replugging everything, and I'm trying to get with the program myself. So I'm answering your question, but I'm actually 2 days into rebuilding my place and rewiring everything to this new system.
It's interesting now because in the world of YouTube, you can go anywhere on YouTube and see these incredible videos of people have learn editing software and this, that, and the other, and they're doing things that were unheard of in 20 years ago. So
Yes.
I agree with you totally. Uh, Unfortunately, sometimes in the as you well know in the jazz world, which is it's an ironic thing to me that I've always said, the world of jazz, well, jazz as an art form, is the most all-encompassing of the art forms because it could draw upon any other art form for inspiration, but still retain its identity, which is the musician as a master improviser. But and that's saying a lot. But sometimes, as you well know, you in the jazz world, people will put down anything that's electronic, etc. I mean, when the you and I know both when the Mahavishnu Orchestra came out with John McLaughlin, and then there was Don Ellis with his incredible big band. It was all electrified and this that. People were like traditionalists were saying that that was a lot of BS and this that and the other, etc. etc. Uh, and of course, Jimi Hendrix, when all the experiments that he did using early electronics with pedals in the blues. He's still playing the blues, but now he's taking the blues to another place. So that's a good examples of people taking electronics and using them in very creative ways.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Bobby. Really quickly, man, I just want to say something, and not to get too political on the jazz thing, but I think, you know, the jazz community could take a page out of the electronic and the pop community's book on more than one topic, promotion and advertising and marketing. The things I think can also push the music into more people's lives. I think also you got to understand with technology comes a change of environment. And if you're going to stick to a certain, it's okay to say you only want to play acoustic music or you only want to, but we're in new environments now, especially if we're going to be in new environments post this COVID-19 scenario. So how are we going to bring the music to people? You know, and what's going to be technology for that? I still believe it's the greatest American art form, in my opinion. I love it to bits. I do it my way, you do it your way, other guys do it their way. I just think to get more younger people involved, you don't have to sell out and make pop music, but you certainly have to put it in an arena where they speak in a language where they can speak it. You can still be acoustic and you can still have certain things. But once you start closing your door and keeping people out, I think you're starting to put the nail in the coffin. That's just my opinion.
Well said, well said. We have a question here from Samuel Jennings. Okay, you answered the question why you left Pearl drums. Why did you leave? Why did you leave Mapex drums?
Once again, man, the relationship, unfortunately, a very great, I think one of the best A&R gentlemen in the music business for drums, Joe Hibbs, who you probably know as well too, passed away. And I just think, unfortunately for that company, when Joe passed, you know, I would say most of the air on all four tires were let out of the tire, and the vehicle just kind of didn't function the same. And it was tough for me to accomplish things and get things done the way I would like to. And also sometimes it's a changing of the guard. Somebody passes away or somebody gets fired and a new person comes on and they have a different idea how they want to run a company. That may not be suitable for you. So it wasn't for me. And I stepped off, and right now I'm kind of freelancing. I'm talking to a few people, but I'm not in a rush to make a decision. But once again, for your young folks out there on the business side of things, you really have to be with the company if you're going to be with one that works for your relationship with what you're doing in your music. You know, ask yourself those questions. Does it benefit me? How can I get my career? Is the company going to support me in a certain? Can I get drums in Japan when I go to Japan? Can I get drums when I play on a late night show? Are they going to be there? Are they going to put me on clinics? Are they going to support me? Do I get one kid a year or one kid every 5 years? These are the things you should be asking yourself when you're getting into any contractual scenario with a company. Is the relationship? Does it work for you? And if it does, fine. And if it doesn't, don't stay in it.
Great. We have we're going to wind it up right now with two questions from the same person. Again, Greg Burrows. He asked, you've designed and used some unique metal sounds in your expression on the kit as a musician. Are there any other further plans for cymbal designs, inventing new sounds, et cetera, for Sabian cymbal company, and from the same person, Greg Burrows. Are you still playing the Korg wave drums?
Yeah, I'm playing the Korg wave drum. Is my favorite electronic instrument. Although it came out in 1995, I still think it's far beyond it's a thinking machine. And if you really want to nerd out, that's my favorite one to nerd out on, because you can change the algorithms in the machine, which makes the machine, for me, timeless. How you want to make the machine sound. I'm going to take the phone off the stand just to show you guys and the folks to see a little bit of my latest designs of what I'm doing. But these aren't Sabian designs, but can you see this stuff here? I don't know.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So these are some of the newer ones, and they are my Sabian symbols, but they're my designs. And what I'm into right now at the moment is just, art, sound and art. We're expressing ourselves. We're drummers. We're out there, we're playing. And how can we have the visual and the sonic thing now be married? So I read this really incredible book called Fractals. And it's about African symbols that you see on material that's not a design. It's actually equations and conversations and information about science and about family. So sometimes you'll see a piece of material, you'll see something that looks like a G clef or a couple of lines. Actually, in that book, it breaks it down. So I thought about scientifically, what can I do to play live, have something have an image, hit it, give it a certain sound, but also image-wise presents itself in a certain kind of way. So Sabian hasn't bought into this concept yet in terms of wanting to come out with it, but I'm doing these myself with a gentleman named Bobby Thomas Jr., who's a great percussionist, by the way. You probably know Bobby Thomas Jr. He's in Florida, and
he used to play with Weather Report, right?
Yeah. Bobby's a frightening guy, brilliant guy, and brilliant mind, and I'm working with Bobby and designing these. So we'll see what happens. But yes, I'm working on some newer ideas, even things that can have lights behind it that have different kind of reflections, because I love art and visualization, any kind of thing that reflects the sound and the ideas at the same time visually is fantastic.
Yeah, speaking about that, we had an exhibit of some of your artwork that's done with lasers and photos, etc. Talk a little bit about that visual side of what.
Sure, I'm glad you brought that up, Bobby, because I forgot about it. Thanks for bringing that up. But if you go to Will Calhoun Art, willcalhounart.com, you'll see it. The idea came from auditioning drum solos with Living Color, where I wanted all the lights out in the venue. And I would go to my electronic wave drum and other pads, and I would set loops up. And when I jumped on a kit to play to my loops, I didn't want people to see me. I wanted them to have a trippy experience of hearing the electronics and hearing the drum solo, but only seeing the streaks of light, only seeing where your hands are moving. And Doug Wimbish, the bass player with Living Color, shot some video for me and showed it to me and said, man, you need to see how this looks. One thing led to another. This gentleman has his company out in California. He contacted me, and I began this kind of an art drum thing where they took some photos of me in a studio, shooting with slow aperture and about 7 or 8 cameras, playing with brushes, playing with sticks, playing Living Color songs, playing jazz. And if you go on the website, the willcalhounart.com site, you will see what the pictures look like. It's basically just the streaks of light, me and the kit we moved. And it's a map of my movements with different colors, and it creates an image.
It's really spectacular. We had an exhibit of Will's artwork using this medium at the Bronx Music Heritage Center, and it's really stunning. So you should definitely go to his website again. What is it? Will Calhoun?
Will Calhoun Art.
WillCalhounArt.com.
.com. Yes. Thank you very much for that, Bobby. I forgot.
We got a question from Kaisha Johnson. Her 7-year-old son, Che, his name, is a percussionist. Is the drum the only instrument he can play? No, I'm sorry. Is the drum or the drum set the only instrument that you can play? He wants to know. Well, you've told us that you play some guitar. Any other instruments that you play?
I play a little guitar. I really like indigenous flutes. I don't know if I got any laying around here, but there's one back here. I have a lot of flutes from southern China, Bawu flutes and husilis from southern China. So I like the sounds of these instruments. I do play the basic bass. Keyboard and drums are important for your son's very young. It's great that to get that idea stuff in his head, but also is to get the thinking to broaden. But I was introduced to wind instruments by the great Pharaoh Sanders, who told me that I should venture off into instruments that I'm not aware of, and he pushed me into that land, and that was the beginning of me taking these flutes and some of these mostly Asian flutes and South American and Central American flutes, and playing them and developing scales and practice. And he gave me great technique to practice. So that's the other thing I would say is the Asian and Central American flutes. But basically, I'm a rhythm section guy: bass, drums, guitar, keyboard, and that's for writing songs and learning songs and helping myself to grow as a composer and as a musician.
Great, fantastic. Now we got last question is
yes,
Jose Gonzalez. How do you keep spiritually and physically in shape?
It's a great question, man. Spiritually, I would say is a lot of it is built around sticking to what grandma said, and sticking to grandma's recipes and keeping my body clean and building my immune system. My grandparents were organic farmers, kind of off the grid. So fortunately, as a child, I was able to go to North Carolina every summer and eat potatoes that I pulled out of the ground, and eat collard greens that I pulled out of the ground, and go pick my own corn and go get my eggs out of the hen house, out of the bird house. So,
oh man, you're Puerto Rican, bro. You're a jíbaro del campo. Where's it from the mountains of Puerto Rico, Rico and Cuba, as they would say.
that's what
or a campesino in the Dominican Republic, yeah.
Okay. I did that, Bobby, because when I was young, I went down south to see my grandparents when I was 6 years old, and I ate the food, and I asked my grandmother what kind of season she used because the food tasted so good, and she said I insulted her, and that was when she said every summer I had to come down so I could learn food's not out of a can, and it's not in the grocery store. That's where it goes after it comes out of the ground. So I got to be honest, my diet piece I'm pretty strict with. And I do work out. I like riding the bike. I play a little hoops from there, here and there. But swimming is one of the best exercises for drums in terms of breathing, your oxygen, moving your arms and your legs. And then I would say the ultimate thing when I'm on tour, I train, I box. I like using the speed bag and the rope mostly. And those things keep my rhythm and keep my arms in shape and keep my breathing in shape as well. And it builds up my stamina. So on the road, when I'm touring, definitely I at least have a rope with me at the least if I can't get a bicycle. And I try to do 500 reps, something like that in the morning and so on. So the rope, but the dieting piece is important. And the thing that we don't do enough to answer the question is sleep. And I'm guilty of it as well. But as you get older, you learn sleep is like money in the bank,
Right.
You got to get more of it because it's going to make you a more clear person the following day. So that's my advice on the spiritual vibe. I don't take up any particular kind of religious aspect, although I was raised in a few of my family, being in different parts of my family, Christians and Muslims and Lutheran or Presbyterian or Baptist or whatever. I've been in all of those places growing up. But my thing, man, is keeping the peace with myself first. And as long as I can keep myself educated, healthy, and keep the peace with myself, then I'll know how to go out in the world and do positive things.
Great. And what's good to know now is that if I ever hear some thumping, like that sounds like a speed bag or whatever, or some rope hitting against the wall or on the floor, I'm gonna go knock on the wall. If I'm in a hotel, yo, Will, what's up, man? The very last question from Tim
Yes.
Ryan. He wants to know: is there any new Living Color album CD release coming? Any new music coming out from Living Color soon, or has it come out yet already?
Yeah. Yes. We recorded quite a few things during our last recording of the Shade record, and we are putting those pieces together now. Some of them actually will also be released as video pieces, so people can see us play them live, perform them live. But yeah, I would say in the coming months and weeks, you'll be hearing quite a few things from the band. But also, we were planning on, it's the 30th anniversary of Time's Up, our second album, and we were planning on going out and touring on it, and the COVID piece kind of parked that. So we're going to take a bunch of live shows from 1990 and 91 from some of those Time's Up experiences, and some newer ones too, and put those together. And thirdly, we are getting together and we're also writing new music to put out a new recording as well. So all three of those things you'll be able to see in the coming weeks.
Man, you just mentioned, you just said you put a timestamp on something just now, talking about 1991. So in other words, this band has been together over 30 years then, basically. It's amazing.
Yes,
thing.
It's hard to believe that, but yes.
And still the same original members, or any changes at all over the
Well,
years?
we had a change in 1990, Doug Wimbish came on. In 93, Doug Wimbish came on. And that was the only change. Mus Skillings played bass on the first two records, and then Doug came on the Stain record, and from then on. So yeah, that was the one change that we had. But same music, everyone still gets along. We're all still in touch with each other, and it's been I would have to say, a fantastic roller coaster ride of ups and downs. As you know, Bobby, we're friends. A lot of people told us it wasn't going to happen. It's not going to be possible. Black rock, blah, blah, blah. There's all these things that were happening, but I'm glad we stuck to our guns and believed in ourselves, which is the most important. And we were fearless. We just jumped into the 9-foot part of the pool and said, this is what we want to do and say. So I'm grateful, man, to be in a band with Doug Wimbish and Corey Glover and Bernie Reed. I'm very grateful that I have comrades that are brilliant musicians. Corey's a hell of a singer. I don't think there's anybody in the rock and roll business that sings better than him, in my opinion. But to have teammates like that, man, it makes my job easier.
Fantastic. I think that's the best piece of advice to give to anybody in terms of being an artist of any type, whether you're a musician, a dancer, a singer, a visual artist, et cetera, a poet, a writer, an actor, is to be fearless, and you certainly have been over the years, and you're a testimony to our hallowed borough, Will. It's so when I first heard about you, and I got a vibe from you. I got, this guy's either from Brooklyn or the Bronx, man, but more from the Bronx because of the attitude. So, and I was so happy to learn that you were from our borough, and you make us all proud. As I always say, you're an SOB, a son of the Bronx, like me. So, and that means a lot in this world. We want to thank you so much, and we thank you for all that you've done as being on the advisory board of the Bronx Music Heritage Center. Now, some of you have been noticing a twirling stick in the background, and that's our.
And I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
That's our co-artistic director, Elena Martinez, who's going to sign up for now. Don't forget, percussion discussion happens every week. Our next percussion discussion will feature.
Next Wednesday, we'll have a next percussion discussion with more clave presentation by Bobby Sanabria. And then after that, we'll have some traditional Puerto Rican rhythms by Jorge Vasquez the following week. So please tune back in. But again, once more, a big round of applause at home for Artistic Director Bobby Sanabria and our special guest, Will Calhoun.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you.
And I want to give a special shout out to making this all happen. We have to thank our staff member, Samba Aragay, for doing all the tech work to make this happen. Samba, thank you. And our other music advisory board member, Christine Licata, who actually was the inspiration to get this project going with a percussion discussion. So we want to thank her. So not only, but you want to say something about Christine or shout out?
I want to say love you and thank you.
And Also, so next week, percussion discussion, 8 o'clock on Wednesdays here. And on Fridays, we have our BMHC, Bronx Music at Home concert. We'll be featuring different artists presenting from where they're staying, where they're sheltering in place, music for you. And this Friday at 8 o'clock, the Royal Bengali Tea House will be performing some Bengali traditional music fused with contemporary music. So we hope to see you there. And also, since we're not having any live performances where we could see you in person, but if you'd love to help us out, make these programs keep going, please go to our website, thisisbronxmusic.org, and donate to WEDCO and the Bronx Music Heritage Center so we can keep up this programming for however long it takes while we're all here together in sheltering in place. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
And we want to thank also Tama Drums, LP, Sabian Cymbals, Vic Firth Sticks, and Remo Skins. So for all their help. And also, those of you who are into the Latin jazz side of things, you can tune into my radio show on Friday nights from 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at WBGO FM. Wherever you are in the world, WBGO.org. It's called the Latin Jazz Cruise. You can even listen to the last week's show right now if you put in your search window, WBGO Latin Jazz Cruise, CRUISE. So we'll hope to see you this Friday on the cruise. But don't worry if you can't be there. You can always listen the next day, etc., because the show is archived for 2 weeks. And I have a special guest this Friday night. So you want to find out who it is? You got to tune in. So we'll see you on the radio. And you know something? Keep doing that.
Well,
Elena, you have to have a percussion discussion stick twirling class.
next percussion discussion will be twirl your drumsticks like John Bonham.
Yes.
That's coming up.
Yeah. Well, what I was gonna say is like that's kind of the same kind of effect that Will's artwork has on you. So when you go to Will's website, you'll be amazed at the artwork that he's created with lasers and everything else. So thank you so much again, Brother Will. And
thank you, Bobby. Thank you, Elena.
Everyone, stay safe. Have a great night.
Remember, the virus is temporary. The music is forever. We'll see you. Bye-bye.